Alright, so electric cars. There's a lot coming out, there's a lot for sale, there's a lot of brands that are really trying to get their EVs out there, so let's talk about it. So the point of the video today is basically there's a lot of vehicles out that, you know, it's hard to keep track of now. And so I just wanted to go through all of the manufacturers that have got a horse in the race, or whatever the saying is, with EVs. And I just wanted to, you know, bring awareness to kind of the amount of options that there are, and how good some might be, or how some others might be really out there. So in no particular order, here are some of the newest EV announcements or EVs for sale. So we'll start with the most obvious. Obviously, everyone knows Tesla. Tesla is kind of what people think about when you talk about EVs or an electric car. And I think everyone knows their options. Their lineup is basically sexy. So you have the S, the E, the X, and the Y, or the 3. And so that's their main lineup. Everyone knows that. And then as for cars that they have that are in the works, there's the Roadster, and then there's also the Cybertruck. The Roadster is basically, it's been delayed as far as I know, again, or it's just forever delayed. It's hard to tell, really. And then you have the Cybertruck, and the Cybertruck's been going through some stuff because its design is so unorthodox that they've changed a lot of stuff. Like I know there were spy shots recently of the wiper blade. I guess it was like one massive wiper or something like that. Like that's where they're at right now with that, and kind of making it legal. So yeah, obviously you know about Tesla. Just starting off easy. So I said no particular order, but I'm starting with Chevy because for a lot of us, I think, you know, the close to home brands would be more surprising if you haven't heard about these. So we'll just start, like I said, with Chevy. They've come out with a couple of cars now, trucks, I guess you'd call them, because that's what they are. They have the Silverado, the Hummer, two types of the Hummer. Two types of the Silverado, technically. You have a work truck and then the regular RST. And then they've announced the Equinox. It looks away. I don't know how to describe it. I'll throw a picture up, but the front grille kind of looks like a mustache or something. It looks okay. It looks like just a Chevy EV. I guess they did what's expected of them. I haven't seen anything else beyond this because this is fairly recent, and yeah, so they have this. So another announcement Chevy made was an EV Blazer. Kind of an announcement. It just says Blazer on their website, and that's about it. It says more information coming soon, so I guess we'll see what that looks like. If it's like a true Blazer, you know, in terms of what the current Blazer is now versus what it used to be. Kind of like the Bronco, how they went full balls to the wall off-road. Like, I hope that's what they do with the electric Blazer. It's hard to tell. You really can't tell with these. I know I mentioned the Hummer, or at least I think I did earlier. The Hummer EV is what started all of this. Basically, that platform development that they needed to do was not just for the Hummer. I think that's why the Hummer EV and Hummer EV SUV are so expensive, because that's where all the time and effort went in. It's got a crazy interior, all the technology, crab walking, whatever. It makes sense as to why I guess it's that expensive. And by that expensive, I mean, alright, so I really have no way of knowing based on their website, because they always do this. They get you with all the pictures, and then they're like, make a reservation and just don't worry about that for now, you know. that's not obviously how this works. There is a price on this, and I'll put it on screen. I believe it's 100,000 plus, which is what I was saying. Basically, that price tag justifies itself because that's what the Silverado is based on, and probably more trucks to come. And speaking of that, like I said, more trucks. The Denali Sierra, looks like they're working on it, and I think from what I'm looking at, it looks better than the Silverado. Just with that picture of the grille, I like the front end better. But yeah, so they're doing trucks across their whole lineup. They have platforms for it now. If the Equinox or Blazer are on a different platform based on the same architecture as the Hummer EV was built on and developed around, I wouldn't be surprised. Or if they're similar to like the Bolt, none of that would be super surprising. So, all right, so moving on to Ford. I think everyone remembers the Ford Mach-E and its launch and how that went. Now, the car itself, from what I've seen, like the GT, I mean the low CG and the torque, I think people like it. The only thing with the Mustang, a Mustang Mach-E is kind of like, it's a bit much to ask because you added 2 more doors, you made it an SUV, and you also made it an electric vehicle. So I've seen these in person. I haven't driven one or been in one, but I've seen them. They don't look bad. I'd have to drive one to really like make up my mind on the whole should we call it a Mustang thing. But yeah, that's one of Ford's options. The other option is going to be the Lightning. So the Lightning is interesting because Ford, in terms of design, was not very creative. So with the Ford Lightning, the way they designed it, it looks similar to any other pickup truck. It's not as out there as, say, the Hummer or the Silverado, because those look very, very different than what they're replacing effectively. But the Lightning, they basically added a light bar in terms of styling, and yeah, it's not offensive, and you definitely know like that's a little different, but it's not as obvious that it's a car from the future, right? Like that's what everyone's going for. So Ford has the Mustang and the Lightning. And now we're going to move to some of the other vehicles that these are the ones you probably don't know about, and if you do, as the list goes on, they might start to feel a little more obscure, maybe. But basically, Kia and Hyundai have made their own electric vehicles because everyone is. And what Kia's done is, I think it's interesting. The whole point I was talking about a second ago about the futuristic styling, both of these have it, the Kia and the Hyundai, and I think it does its job. These Korean brands have basically come a long way in terms of where their cars are at and everything, and I think what they're doing now, and I don't remember who was saying it in what video, but they made a good point, and that is, I think at this point they've realized that this styling, it draws in people. I mean, a lot of people now really don't want to just drive like a boring SUV. If they want an SUV, like there's no excitement to it anymore. So that's what something like this offers. And not even their EVs, they look pretty out there, but they're not ugly. And that's good for the brand. But that, I think, is why they've done a really good job in terms of like making the future car. I think that's like a goal of all of these companies, is to make the car that would sell based on the idea that like, hey, this is the future, and that quirkiness to it is what's cool about it. And so this is the Hyundai, or Hyundai, or I don't know how to say this word anymore. But basically, I think it's the same platform. I could be wrong, but it has a different styling. It's old future, I'd say, but it's still future, if that makes any sense. More boxy and like edgy, whereas the other one is more of like a swoopy future. I don't know. These are all like random words, but I think the point is conveyed. It's a different kind of futuristic styling for a very similar vehicle from two companies that are basically one, as far as I'm aware. There is more to it though, but I won't get into semantics. And then this threw me off. While I was looking up Hyundai, I realized that they have other EVs that I've never heard of or seen, so they might not be for sale in the United States, or at least in my area, but they have the Ioniq Electric, and it just kind of looks like a Kia. I don't remember the sedan, but it looks like one of the Kia sedans in the front. And then if you go to the rear, it kind of looks like a Chevy Spark. Mostly that bit there with like the black and then the lights. And then another Hyundai that I found that's interesting is, I guess, the Kona Electric. I, again, have not heard about these until I did this, but it kind of has looks and style similar to the Mustang Mach-E. And like I was saying with styling, I think people care about that now more than previously, because previously, I mean, the sales of SUVs and crossovers, they've just been going up and up and up. And now it's to the point where people want different again, but they don't want different type of vehicle. They want a different look. They want to stand out. With manufacturers like Porsche, you have options, a whole bunch of options with the Taycan. The fastest model is the Turbo S, not Type S, that's Acura. The Taycan, let's see, 2.6 seconds, 0 to 60, what the website says. I don't know if that includes rollout or not, but basically, it's a nice car. Infotainment, from what I've heard and from what I've seen, could be better. But the nice thing about Porsche, not only do you have a million options for the same car, but there's basically the same car in a different company's trim, which is Audi. So based on the same platform and everything else, Audi has the e-tron GT and different variants of it, just like Porsche, different trim, whatever, all that small stuff. But basically this one has a better interior in terms of if you're gonna like actually daily drive it, you want things to be in a certain spot in a certain way. Very similar cars. I haven't seen either of these two, the Porsche or the Audi, because they're expensive, but also because they're EVs. So if you see one, I think right now you're pretty lucky to see one. And so now we're getting to the point where some of these EVs you either don't know about or haven't heard about for different reasons. The BMW EVs, the iX and the i4. I believe the iX, I had seen something from like CES or whatever where they had a wrap that was changing colors, but that was it. The i4, it just kind of looks like a BMW. It still has a massive grille. It's not even like a silhouette or whatever of the grille like on the i8, I think, but it's there. I haven't heard anything about it. If you know if it's a good car, let me know, but it's there. Alright, so this is future me. I realized while shooting this I didn't include Mercedes, so just for the sake of continuity, that's why I'm wearing a different shirt. Alright, so more recently Mercedes has come out with the EQS, and while it might look a certain way on the outside, from what I've seen, it's really nice, but you know, you'd expect that being a Mercedes and all. It does look a little odd. It's not super offensive, but it's also not super good looking. I also heard that Mercedes is working on something else, or at least they have a prototype or something like that, and I'll show you that here in a second. It looks pretty nice, but you know, it's a Mercedes, so it's expected of them. The one last interesting thing I'll bring up with this is that you can choose the sound that you hear when you're accelerating. I do think people are going to be adding sounds when it comes to acceleration and that sort of thing, but most people, especially with luxury cars right now, it's kind of a gimmick. So let's go on to the other Mercedes electric car I was talking about. Okay, so the Mercedes concept, it's called the Vision EQXX. It looks pretty good. It looks much better than the EQS. I guess EQ is going to be their naming scheme or something like that. But 650 miles of range. And I mean, given how sleek it looks, I can kind of believe it, because that's one of those more important things when it comes to these. Just looking at it, I think it looks good. So next up would be Rimac. Rimac is interesting because they recently were either bought or they're like a part of the same company as Bugatti. Something basically happened with them and Bugatti, and now that they are together, they can share information, development, whatever. Anyways, this company, while it's very young, basically has a lot of potential, and they've shown it. They have used their potential. Being with Bugatti, it's even more clear that like they're here to stay. So the Nevera, you will never see this. Anyone watching this video, I'm sorry to tell you, you won't see this. But the whole point of this is basically these things are here. Like electric supercars, they're here. The Nevera is just the most recent. I think they had something called like the Concept 1, and that was absurd. And that was making the rounds in the internet a while ago. But this is a great car. You'll never see it. I'll never see it. That's just the reality of it. And so now that we've hit kind of the point where we're talking about companies that you probably haven't heard of or are more out there after the performance companies and everything else that we were talking about, we're kind of into the space now of like the Tesla competitors. And what I mean by that is these companies have come up in America and are trying to do the same thing that Tesla did in the early days, but quicker, more efficiently. They're looking at Tesla's homework, so to speak. They're different than a Tesla, but they're startups, I guess. That's the long way of saying it. I believe they just had an IPO. Anyways, Rivian, they have two cars. They have two trucks. They have the R1T and the R1S. R1 just being Rivian Model 1, T for truck, S for SUV. Clever, simple, to the point. These are great off-road, and a lot of people like them. I like the styling. That's another brand new electric car sometime might be out there, might see it in the future. And pay attention to them. Same with the next couple brands here, companies. There's potential. So Lucid takes a different route on the approach of being a different Tesla. And what I mean by that is Rivian currently is like the truck Tesla company, you know, like that's how it's perceived, feedback, whatever, perception. That's their approach. Lucid has like the approach of being the Mercedes of the electric vehicle Tesla world. Build quality, you know, performance, comfort, whatever. Everything I've seen about it is really good. Both Rivian and then also Lucid, they're supposed to eventually get some kind of autopilot. I believe it's like Dream Cruise or something like that. I don't know what Rivian calls it. But that's another thing that comes with these. I believe all of these manufacturers are trying to figure out how to automate the driving in some way or another. But that's a really nice looking car, and it's cool. And then finally we have Polestar. And Polestar is interesting because they exist and that's about as much press as they've gotten recently, because you know the spotlight's kind of been on things like the Plaid or some of the new startups that are actually starting to ship cars. This is interesting. It doesn't look bad. I believe Polestar is basically sub company of Volvo, and I believe Volvo was bought by Geely, and they're a Chinese company, and that's the hierarchy. Anyways, nice looking car, and that's about all I can say about it. At this point, it's just another EV from another manufacturer, and that's the whole point of the video. These are all these options coming out, and I guess just keep your eye out for some of them. So let me know if I told you anything you hadn't heard before, especially with some of the more recent announcements where There's not a whole lot of information available, especially with things like the Blazer. But yeah, if you've heard something for the first time here, let me know, because that'd be super cool. If you like the video, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, comment, bell, share. You know the laundry list of things. And if you didn't like it, dislike it. I'm the only one who sees it, so I don't care. And we'll see you in the next one.